Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 action film End of Loyalty. The film is co-written and directed by, and I do hope I pronounce this correctly, Hiroshi Katagiri. And it stars Justin Joslin, Braxton Angle, Simon Phillips, Vernon Wells and Michael Paré. Now it focuses on a character, a son who witnesses his father, who's like the head of like a mob or a gangster outfit, going to meet a rival, played by Vernon Wells, Rooker. He sees his father killed by the Vernon Wells character. He's injured in the process, ends up in hospital. And swears revenge. And his childhood friend, they were practically brothers growing up, Ray, played by Braxton Angle, who now works, I think it's something like the FBI, something like that, comes home from an assignment to offer his assistance. And essentially they end up trying to track down this Rooker character in order to take their revenge for the death of his father. Right, what are my thoughts on End of Loyalty? Well, this is directed by Hiroshi Katagiri, who hasn't done a lot of films, and he's probably more famous for, well, I say famous, he's done like special effects and makeup on things like Avatar, which is a little bit odd to me when you consider, when you watch this film, because there are nothing in the way really of special effects in this film. There's certainly no like makeup effects that are needed. It's not like a sci-fi film or anything like that. It's just a straight up like gangster stroke action flick, and a pretty cheap one at that. Now, the first thing I want to say about this film is I thought at times this film looked the part, and at times it felt the part. You know what I mean? Some of the action, especially some of the fight scenes, were choreographed quite well, if a little bit over rehearsed. There are certainly some fight scenes with there's an Asian guy who's like the number two to the Vernon Wells bad guy in this film, who's like very adept at martial arts, and he's very good. And then you've got Braxton Angle, this Ray character who's like this FBI agent or something, who appears to be handy with his fists and trained in some form of martial arts, but it's almost like he's an actor that's been taught to do it. He just doesn't flow the same. But it works occasionally, some of the action scenes in this film. But you can certainly tell, as I've said, they're overly rehearsed and just don't look overly slick. But you've got to remember, when you're going into watching this film is a fairly low budgeted film. It is not like a glossy, flashy, action flick or anything like that. Now, this film is going heavily for like the buddy cop vibe, but you've almost got like a trio. So you've got this Braxton Angle's character Ray, you've got this Grant, and then you've got this Vincent, who's like Grant's bodyguard. He's like English. He's always cracking jokes and swearing, and there's like this trio of arguing that's going on between them, and they're definitely going for like this buddy cop vibe, but it just doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because the writing isn't good enough, and the dialogue's not good enough, and the chemistry between them just isn't there, which is a shame. It just didn't work. An awful lot of the dialogue was very, very cringy, and their attempts at humour just completely misses the mark. It just feels out of place in this film. And there's other things, there's other inconsistencies. I mean, 1 minute he's shot and injured and in hospital recovering. The next minute he's out taking out bad guys, almost oblivious to the fact that he's got one, or I'm not even sure, maybe two bullet holes in him. You know what I mean? We're just supposed to conveniently ignore that. And there's other scenes again where he's supposed to be interrogating people and he's just shooting them left, right and centre, and it's almost like they're trying to make humour out of that, and again it just felt inappropriate. It didn't feel like it worked. So it's a very, very disjointed and unbalanced film, this, because I thought the performances from everybody here, certainly the main cast, were of a decent standard. But at times it felt like some of them were rushing their lines and they didn't have the budget to do more takes. So especially the Simon Phillips character, it felt like he was rushed, or he was rushing his lines, so you couldn't just quite get what he was saying, and it was mumbling sometimes. So it just felt like, this was obviously a snappy production. They worked through it fast, and there was unfortunately more emphasis put on the action scenes and the choreography, rather than the character development and the dialogue, and the chemistry. And I think if a little bit more time and effort had been put into the latter, this could have easily elevated itself, because it's a fairly simple story. It's a revenge story. Some of the characters, could have been interesting and compelling and even layered, but ultimately it can only be what I would describe as a bit of a disappointment, this, but not without potential. I watch a lot of low budget, like indie action films, and many of them are just dire. Whereas I don't think this is. I do see potential in this film, or I did see potential in this film. Unfortunately, I think the budget let it down, and it could have done with some better writing, a bit more. Maybe some of the humour taken out because it just didn't feel appropriate in the film. But there's something here, but unfortunately it just doesn't come off for me. This one could have been elevated, in my opinion, with some more care and attention put into it. But as it stands, I can't really score it any higher than the score I have given it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.